Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to take a deep dive into a massive infrastructure system that is literally sitting right beneath our feet. And honestly, it usually goes completely unnoticed, right up until disaster strikes. We're talking about underground storage tanks. So if you're managing a facility, dealing with corporate compliance, or you're just curious about the environmental safety nets that actually protect our communities, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to build a straightforward, jargon-free playbook for managing these systems and keeping your liability in check. Let's jump right in. Think about the last time you were at your local gas station or maybe driving past a big industrial parking lot. Have you ever actually stopped to consider what's buried just beneath the pavement? The reality is there are massive quantities of hazardous materials, chemicals, and fuels stored directly below us. Because we can't see these containers, it's incredibly easy to just forget they exist. But, when you're dealing with thousands of gallons of toxic or highly flammable liquids, having strict safety protocols isn't just some nice-to-have suggestion. It's an absolute legal must to stop quiet, underground catastrophes from happening.
So, here is our roadmap for today's Explainer. First, we'll look at the hidden risks. Second, safe tanks. Third, detecting leaks. Fourth, the financial backing. And finally, number 5, the costs of breaking the rules.
Okay, let's start with Section 1. The hidden risks and why protecting our soil and water is so crucial. Before we get completely bogged down in the technical requirements, we need to understand exactly why these strict regulations even exist in the first place. And it really comes down to how shockingly fast things can go south. When a buried tank starts to fail, it doesn't just make a puddle you can mop up. Those chemicals seep straight into the dirt and make a beeline for the local groundwater. The same water that feeds our drinking supplies and local ecosystems. A leak that goes unchecked is an immediate, catastrophic health hazard. And that right there is the entire driving force behind this regulatory rulebook. Moving right along to Section 2, Safe Tanks. We're looking at both the hardware itself and the daily operations. We've seen a really massive shift in safety standards over the last few decades. In the old days, companies basically just dropped a bare steel tank into a hole, buried it, and hoped for the best. They were super prone to rust, and catching a leak relied entirely on someone physically noticing it. Today, it is a whole different ballgame. Modern compliance requires these incredibly robust, double-walled systems. It's essentially a tank inside another tank. They have active corrosion proofing built right in, along with automatic spill prevention to catch human errors when fuel is being delivered. Basically, being compliant means your hardware is actively fighting against its own failure.
But here's the catch. You can't just bury a state-of-the-art tank and walk away. Top-tier hardware is great, but operators have to stay constantly vigilant. That means sticking to a strict daily checklist. You have to monitor all fluid transfers to make sure nothing overfills. You need to run scheduled checks on the equipment, do actual physical walkthroughs of the facility, and, this is a big one, keep incredibly detailed records. If an inspector shows up to audit your site, those maintenance logs are literally your only proof that you're playing by the rules.
Another absolutely crucial point here is what happens when you're done with a tank. Your responsibility doesn't just magically disappear. You can't just leave an abandoned tank sitting in the dirt. There's a highly specific, legally mandated process for this called permanent closure. You have to pump out every single drop of fuel, scrub the inside clean safely, and then properly seal it up or rip it out of the ground entirely. And on top of all that, you have to formally test the dirt and water around the site, just to prove to the regulators that the tank didn't silently leak while you were using it. That brings us to Section 3, detecting leaks. It's all about staying vigilant and knowing exactly how to respond. Look, no matter how much you spend on amazing hardware, things can and do break. So catching a tiny problem before it turns into a massive, multi-million-dollar disaster is everything. For your standard fuel setups, just crossing your fingers is literally illegal. The regulations demand active, systematic checkups at least once a month, every single month. Operators are required to use approved sensors or testing methods to make sure they aren't missing any inventory or to check if that double wall has been compromised. The whole point is to make sure a leak never goes unnoticed for months on end. Now, what happens if one of those monthly sensors actually triggers an alarm? Well, you are legally obligated to jump into a very strict 3-step playbook. Step 1, stop the bleeding, shut down the pumps, and stop the release immediately. Step 2, investigate. You need to figure out exactly how far the contamination has spread into the soil and the groundwater. And Step 3, execute a full-scale environmental cleanup. This framework is designed to take a totally chaotic emergency and turn it into a clear, predictable, and mandated process.
All right, Section 4, the financial backing. Essentially proving you have the funds to clean up a mess.
Now, this is the part of the regulation that catches a lot of business owners totally off guard. Regulators are well aware that scrubbing a toxic spill out of the earth is mind-bogglingly expensive. So they don't wait for a spill to happen. They demand upfront proof that your company can handle a disaster. The magic number? $1 million. Usually through insurance or bonds, most operators have to legally demonstrate they have access to at least $1 million per incident. It's basically a guarantee that there's cash immediately available to clean the environment and compensate people. So a company can't just declare bankruptcy and stick the taxpayers with the cleanup bill.
So while that cool $1 million is the standard baseline, there is a bit of a concession built into the rules depending on the size of your operation. If you're a smaller organization handling lower volumes of fuel and you're not actually producing petroleum, that threshold is cut in half, dropping to $500,000. But let's be honest, even with that discount, $500,000 is still a massive financial commitment to prove you're ready to protect the environment.
Finally, we've reached Section 5, rule-breaking costs and the really severe penalties for non-compliance.
So what actually happens if an organization gets lazy and decides to cut corners? When state or federal regulators show up for an inspection and find a violation, maybe you skipped your leak checks or your spill gear is busted. They don't just hand out a polite warning. They have the authority to issue immediate civil penalties. We're talking fines of up to $5,000 for just a single regulatory violation.
But honestly, here's where it gets truly terrifying for a company's bottom line. That $5,000 fine, it is not a flat fee, it's a compounding penalty. Regulators can hit you for up to that full amount for every individual tank that's out of compliance, and then they multiply that by every single day you failed to fix the issue. If you drag your feet for, say, a month and you've got 3 broken tanks, you are no longer looking at $5,000, you're suddenly looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. It's very intentionally designed to devastate an organization's finances if they refuse to play by the rules.
And the pain doesn't stop at your bank account. Alongside those massive compounding financial fines, regulators carry a lethal operational penalty right in their back pocket. They have the legal authority to what's called red tag your system. This literally prohibits any supplier from delivering fuel to your tanks. They effectively choke off your supply chain overnight, completely paralyzing your daily operations until you can definitively prove your systems are back in compliance.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, vital question to think about. Are your organization's underground systems a secure, compliant asset, or are they a hidden compounding liability just waiting to surface? The environmental stakes here are absolutely sky high, but as we've seen, the financial and operational risks to your business are just as massive. I'd highly recommend taking these insights back to your workplace, double-checking your leak detection protocols, and making sure your compliance status is rock solid before a regulator or a catastrophic leak forces your hand. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
If you found this helpful or want to stay updated when this regulation changes, subscribe and support the channel. And if you need the full technical details on this CFR, click the link in the description below. See you next time.